Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rank and File Sports. And today we're going to be hopping right back into our series where we are predicting every single Power 4 team's record by the start of the college football season. And today it's the California Golden Bears. And Cal has just made their move to the Atlantic Coast Conference, which makes perfect sense given that California is now on the East Coast. Don't question it. We don't understand why they're in the ACC either. The Bears start the season with a home game against UC Davis, which should be a pretty easy win to start the year before a difficult road trip to face the Auburn Tigers. Auburn is going to be a pretty average team in the SEC this year. Hugh Freeze is looking to make some improvements on the offensive side of the ball. And just overall, the roster is getting better, and this is going to be a very difficult game for Cal to win on the road. They have a Mountain West opponent on September 14th with San Diego State coming to town. This game shouldn't be overly difficult either. The Aztecs are going to be one of the lower rated teams in the Mountain West this season. They aren't quite as good as they have been in years past. So this game should still be a win for Cal. ACC play opens up with a pretty difficult road trip to Florida State. The Seminoles are going to be one of the favorites to win the conference again this season. So this is a really tough way for the Bears to start out ACC play. And after the bye week, it doesn't get any easier with Miami, another team who is on the rise. Even though this is a home game for Cal, Miami is a very talented team. They brought in Cam Ward out of the transfer portal, who was one of the best quarterbacks in the transfer portal. This is going to be a tough game to win for the Bears. They play Pitt on the road, which will be the easiest out of their first four ACC matchups, and it's still not really that easy of a game with how far Cal has to travel. This one is still going to be difficult, but they'll at least have a little bit better of a chance than when they have to play NC State at home. The Wolfpack are another one of the very talented ACC teams this season. They'll have a decent chance to win the conference, but they're going to have to pull off some upsets if they want to do that. Following week is Oregon State, one of their friends from the Pac-12 before they left them behind. Now, Cal is probably a little bit more talented than the Beavers this season. They have the home field advantage. This one definitely leans in Cal's favor, but it is by no means a guaranteed win. After the bye week, they face Wake Forest on the road, another really far road trip for Cal. I believe Cal travels more distance than any other team this season, and they only have 5 away games, something around 12,500 total miles. They have 2 home games right after that Wake Forest game with Syracuse and Stanford. Syracuse brings in Kyle McCord from Ohio State, who was essentially forced to leave by the fans because even though he was an okay quarterback, he just did not meet the Buckeye standards. At Syracuse, he'll be one of the better quarterbacks that they have had in a long time. So Syracuse should be a pretty decent team this year. They probably will not be contending for the ACC championship though because there's just not enough talent around him. Stanford is another one of the Pac-12 schools in California that decided to move to the Atlantic Coast Conference. So this game will actually be a conference game that is able to stay on the West Coast, which is really nice for Stanford because they don't have to travel that far for a conference game. This one should still be pretty close. Cal will probably be favored. We believe that they are a little bit more talented than Stanford this season. And finishing out the season is a road trip to SMU, also making their ACC debut this season, but they're moving from a Group of 5 conference. Now, SMU is a pretty good team. They have a pretty easy ACC schedule as well. They'll probably be favored in this game. Cal has a total of 7 home games and 5 away games, with only 2 of their opponents ranked in the rank and file top 25, giving them a schedule difficulty of 3 out of 10.
The lone guaranteed win this year for Cal is UC Davis. UC Davis has made some noise in the past in the FCS, but if you just noticed, I just said FCS. As we all know, Cal is in the FBS, now in the ACC. Two very different divisions. One's um, much more high competition than the other, with no disrespect intended towards the FCS. But we think Cal won't have much of a problem with the Aggies, especially in a Week 1 home game at Berkeley. Looking at the toss-ups for Cal, we have 6 of them. We have San Diego State, Pitt, Oregon State, Wake Forest, Syracuse, and Stanford. All these teams are relatively evenly matched. For example, teams like Pitt and Stanford are significantly worse on paper than the rest of the teams on this list, but by and large, they're all, you know, relatively similar as far as the skill level of their team. We think San Diego State's one of the better mid-major programs, so we think they can give Cal a tough time because Cal is middle of the pack to below average ACC team. As far as Pitt goes, they fall in the same camp as Cal does, middle of the pack to lower tier ACC team. We expect that game to be close. It is in Pittsburgh. It's a long flight for Cal, but we think that they can play the Panthers tough, maybe even come away with the win. As far as Oregon State goes, this is their former conference foe when the Pac-12 was a thing. Oregon State, at this point, their future looks like they may end up being forced to join the Mountain West, but for now, they're holding out hope that they can end up joining a better conference than that. Um, but with that being said, this Oregon State team was good last year, but they're not going to repeat that same success with their head coach now at Michigan State and their quarterback DJ Uiagalelei now at Florida State. So we think that Cal can give them a good game, maybe even win it, but it will be close. As far as Wake Forest and Syracuse go, these are two teams that aren't as good as they've been, in the past few years. Syracuse especially, it's really hard to get a read on them. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they are really, really bad. This year, they won't be bad or really, really bad per se. They got quarterback Kyle McCord from Ohio State to come in and be their quarterback. So they will be a decent middle of the pack offense at worst in the ACC. So, we think that Cal can give them a tough time though because of their defense. Always a pretty decent defense. Just a team that always seems to win a game or two they shouldn't. So we got to give this one, a read on, a close game. We expect this one to go down to the wire. And as far as Stanford goes, on paper we don't really know who's better. It's kind of hard to say. But this is a rivalry game. It's not a big deal to a whole lot of people outside of the Bay Area in California, but neither fan base likes each other very much. The game's always competitive, so we'd be frankly idiots if we didn't put this in the toss-up category. We have 4 likely losses this year for Cal, starting with Auburn. Auburn is a team that routinely underperforms in the SEC. But outside of the SEC, they're a team that teams really don't want to face. They are very talented. They play good defense. Just like really any SEC school, they hit hard. If you throw the ball over the middle, you can expect to get popped. And Cal being outside of that, culture, being on the West Coast, now moving over to the ACC, we think that they're going to have a tough time against these Tigers. It's going to be an uphill battle for the Bears to be able to pull off an upset against Auburn. As far as Miami goes, they're adding Cam Ward. Their offense is going to be humming this year. They're going to be putting up a lot of points, and as long as the defense is, middle of the pack in the ACC, they shouldn't have an issue with Cal. As far as NC State and SMU are concerned, likely losses for sure, but, Cal could, play spoiler and upset one of these two teams, we feel. As we said, Cal always seems to beat a team or two they shouldn't during the season, and they play good defense. NC State isn't particularly flashy, even though they are good. They're fundamentally sound, they're pretty disciplined. They do a good job, just not beating themselves. But Cal is that way too, so NC State may have more talent, but if you don't beat yourself, you have a chance against most teams, and that's why we think that, this game could be a sleeper pick for Cal, potentially. But Is it likely? Absolutely not. NC State shouldn't have much of a problem with Cal at all. As far as SMU goes, same logic applies, except SMU, tougher to get a read on them. They're playing in a big conference for the first time since the Southwest Conference folded after the 1995 college football season. So it's been a long time since they've played, some real good competition. They seem like they're a talented team, just as any team in Texas, there's a lot of talent in a Power 4 school. So we think that these Mustangs are going to be a, pretty decent competitor in the ACC this year. But with Cal, we think that they are a team that can play spoiler, like we said. But playing the odds, we think SMU wins easily. And finally, we have one guaranteed loss for the Bears this year, and that's Florida State. Florida State is just in another class compared to Cal. Team is ultra athletic. Coach Norvell has done a great job there as far as getting that program back to its winning tradition. We don't expect Cal to put up much of a fight against these guys. It is college football, so anything can happen, but we would be absolutely stunned if they're even able to keep this game close beyond, a half. Florida State's just, on paper, the best team in the ACC. We think that this team won't be quite as good as they were last year, but still, right in Tier 1, right solidly in Tier 1 of the ACC.
And with that, we'll move on to the schedule recap. We have them taking out UC Davis in their first game of the season pretty easily before dropping a very difficult road game to Auburn. Back home, we like the Bears to beat San Diego State, moving to 2-1 before dropping their first two games in ACC play. The road trip to Pitt, we have Pitt favored slightly, but we like the Bears to pull off that upset win, moving to 3-3 when they come home to face NC State. Now, NC State we think is going to be pretty big favorites in this game. However, we like Cal to pull off a massive upset at home here. However, the following week, the Bears have a bit of a letdown with Oregon State. We actually have Cal favored in this one, but losing at home. Following the second bye week, the road trip to Wake Forest ends up being a loss. Syracuse and Stanford come to town, and we have Cal winning both of those games, making themselves bowl eligible before dropping the final game of the season to SMU, which puts their record at 6-6. The projected record is 4.95 and 7.05, which really favors them not making a bowl game. ESPN likes them at 6.6 and 5.4, so almost getting a seventh win with a 5.2% chance to make the playoffs and a 0.1% chance to win the national championship. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in our next video.